Okay, everybody, welcome. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how you can become a thought leader in your industry at virtually no cost other than your time. And if there's one thing I've learned over the past couple months is some of us have gained a little more time in our lives, for better or for worse, thanks to this minor pandemic that's struck us all over the world, actually. Welcome to PDX Mindshare. This is our virtual workshop series. For those of you not as familiar with PDX Mindshare, we've been around for 20 years. We've done workshops for about half that time, and we took a bit of a hiatus, and we were back last month with our new webinar series, and we'll probably have more in the future here. But this is the second of a two-part series that we wanted to get in front of people due to the economic crisis, the unemployment crisis. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk about building your thought leadership. So my name is Kent Lewis, and I am the founder of PDX Mindshare. And I'm also, for my day job, president and founder of Anvil Media. You can follow me on the Twitter at Kent J. Lewis. Connect with me, please, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is /in Kent Lewis. And you know that's the right Kent Lewis from Portland, Oregon. So thank you all for being here. So let's get started. Let me just make sure I didn't rush myself. Yeah, we're sharing screen. We're all good. Okay. So this relates to the thought leadership theme. I'm not just trying to talk about how great I am, but I also think it's helpful for you to know who is talking to you today. And I actually, was born and raised in Seattle, grew up there, went to Western up in Bellingham, and started my postgraduate career in marketing at a PR agency, a full service agency up in Seattle. And there were no jobs for me back then in '94. So I moved down to Portland for a paid internship versus the unpaid one up in Seattle. And I knew exactly one person when I moved to Portland, and that was my cousin who had gone to U of O, stuck around Portland, and they had a spare room. So I became a roommate. And that's the beginning of my Portland stint that's spanned now 25 years. And I since then have gained a lot of connections, physical, personal connections in Portland, and then virtual connections all over the world, thanks to becoming, to a degree, a thought leader. So I do teach and I speak and I write regularly, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I can attribute however you want to determine success, I will determine it as I'm paying the bills, I'm keeping my family fed, and I have a wonderful team here at Anvil that I'm able to keep employed even through this crisis. So I'd say that's success, but I have definitely built the brand, both Anvil and Mindshare, as part of my thought leadership strategy. And I want to share some of my best practices with you today. So brief agenda overview. We're going to talk about some foundational elements of thought leadership building. And those include, then we'll go into the details. So speaking opportunities, securing those speaking gigs, writing or syndicated content, typically articles, generating press coverage, third-party validation, securing relevant industry awards. And then let's talk a little bit about the end game, which really should be the beginning game, but we're going to build upon our strategies today, and then keep the end game in mind as you walk away with some of these takeaways. I have a bunch of additional resources in the appendix. We will be posting a copy of this presentation on SlideShare. We'll also add an audio copy on our YouTube account for PDX Mindshare, and we'll have links to additional resources, articles related to the topic in the appendix as well. So let's get started. Before you can be a thought leader in anything in terms of considered professional career-oriented, you're going to have a strong LinkedIn presence. So last month, my workshop was how to build a powerful LinkedIn presence. This is a singular slide recap of some of those key takeaways. So a strong headshot, a strong or relevant masthead background image, but most importantly, it's your description. Having the right keywords, maximizing the character count of your description that's right under your name. So mine is president and founder of Anvil Media, speaker, author, and BuzzSumo top most influential digital marketer. Now, granted, 2019 was a long time ago. But the other thing to look at is get to over 500 connections as quickly as possible, because once you're over 500, say 501 or 50,001, you are, in my mind, credentialed because you have a big network, right? Um, I was one of the first million users or members of LinkedIn, and I'm at over almost 19,000 connections right now. That's been a decade of work to get there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But make sure you've filled out your profile, so your description in first person, your overview or your bio, as you call it, all of your work experience, relevant education, licenses, certifications, volunteer experience, skills, accomplishments, any additional information. If you speak multiple languages, secure skills and endorsements, and most notably, create status updates in terms of posts, documents, blog posts, and make sure that you've muted your microphone while you're listening, and then we can unmute for the Q&A. Thank you, everybody. You've got, let me just do that, make this easier for everybody here. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Yeah, there we go. All right. So back on it. So you can also add videos or presentations to SlideShare and share those as well. So a strong LinkedIn presence is the first step, because when you, three main reasons. One is it's easier than sharing a resume as just sending people a LinkedIn profile, linking to it in your bio, in your signature file, on your website. It is your Rolodex, right? Secondarily, it shows up in Google for your name. So when people are searching for you to do research, you hope that your company or website bio is number one and LinkedIn is number two. And we'll, time allowing, take a quick look, surf around the internet and take a look at some of those things. And then third is the additional content you can create on LinkedIn has a bigger life on other social platforms as you syndicate that content out, like I do with my blog posts or my, what we call LinkedIn Pulse. It's the blog that is attached to your profile, and it's free and it's easy to post. And I just posted yesterday about the George Floyd situation and racial inequality and all of that. And I posted that yesterday, but I didn't share it on social because I was going along with the Tuesday blackout. But now it's game on again, doing my usual posts. So how do I post? Foundational element is to utilize a tool like Hootsuite or Sprout Social to cross-syndicate or cross-post your content. So I use it. My primary platform for business is LinkedIn. Secondary is Twitter. Third is anything else. I don't use Facebook for business. Instagram is mostly personal. So you might see something out on YouTube, but most of that is under Anvil or PDX Mindshare. So I utilize these platforms to schedule, to track the shortened URLs, and to track trends, keywords, and engage people through comments. Things you can do on Twitter with one profile, but when you have multiple profiles, you really should use a tool. And Hootsuite has a free version. The paid version is all of $6 a month for a single or up to 2 users, as I understand it, at least. So my foundational strategy beyond posting daily to Hootsuite, usually hourly on LinkedIn, and I syndicate that all that content to Twitter, which I care secondarily about, is that I'm in your feed from 8 to 5, roughly once an hour. That may seem like a lot, but if you check once an hour and you see me every hour with something new, so be it. But most people only check LinkedIn once or twice a day. So it's not that overwhelming. I also syndicate LinkedIn to Twitter, Instagram to Facebook. There are certain relationships, one feed the other. They're not necessarily bidirectional. And then I typically will blog on one of 3 sites: LinkedIn for business or entrepreneurship, SEM PDX for digital marketing, occasionally on Anvil, but then I also syndicate articles to Portland Business Journal and Smart Brief. And so, but the biggest push has been podcasting. So I have my own podcast I did 10 years ago for 5 years called Podcast for Closers is my current podcast. But I was co-host of a show called Dad's Unplugged. That content's all gone because my co-host and his wife, their business went bankrupt. So he ripped all the content off the internet. And I lost 5 years of a weekly show, which was heart-wrenching. So took a couple of years off and relaunched with Podcasts for Closers. But I'm also a guest host or co-host of 2 other podcasts, including one we taped yesterday on, again, the George Floyd and racial inequality and what happens next with all of that. So that's just kind of my social strategy. And if I blog on one platform, I'll share it on others. I'll put status updates on multiple platforms. The idea is this all ties together to make sure that I am in your feed daily across platforms as an expert in digital marketing, entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. And then again, part of being a thought leader is you should be, a verified Twitter profile. You should have some sort of core following, or else you're not going to be considered a thought leader. I don't know very many professional speakers that have 200 followers on Twitter. Most are going to have 5,000 or more. Some have 50,000 followers, and some have millions. But the idea is that you're going to have a critical mass of followers on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So the bigger your network, the more people you follow on Twitter, the more likely they'll follow you. It's a little bit bootstrappy, but it works. Same thing with LinkedIn. The more connections you have, the more likely they are to follow you, see your feed, and grow your network from there. You can also utilize tools like Follower Wonk, BuzzSumo to see who the influencers are in your industry and follow them, engage them, give them love, share their content, and you'll see that you will grow. But most importantly, utilize hashtags and cite other platforms or profiles to give them the love so that people will see that you're legit and you're generous with your time. A good way to build a following. So that's the foundation. That's the table stakes. LinkedIn and a basic presence on Twitter and the other social profiles. That's then from there, it's easier to do the rest of the thought leadership strategies and tactics that I'm outlining now. So the number one, these are not in order of importance per se or impact, although I would say speaking has generated my best clients as a marketer and an agency owner the last 20 years, and I highly recommend it. I also speak on average 30 times a year, and while COVID has slowed down my in-person, I've canceled at least 6 speaking engagements this year just through September. Most have been rescheduled, and I've added more webinars and virtual conferences since then. I just did one right before this, which is why I was a minute late, for an organization called Marketing Analytics Summit. And it was supposed to be in Vegas. I was supposed to be in Vegas right now, but instead I did a virtual conference from my house. So the idea with speaking is it's third-party validation, because if somebody's inviting you in to speak as an expert, that's validating. And then when people see you as an audience member, as a speaker, as an expert, you're already winning them over. It's that third-party validation. We'll talk about similar with press coverage or syndicating articles. Your voice and your words are theoretically what make you the expert. But even if your words aren't that impressive, and believe me, I've seen a lot of very bad speakers, they've built a persona that's greater than their knowledge base, basically. Or maybe they're a knowledge expert and a terrible presenter. Either way, what you really want to be is knowledgeable and a good presenter. So some people feel the need to do Toastmasters or other training. That's always helpful if speaking isn't your natural place. But I would say practice and experience makes it the easiest. So start local. Start with a local chamber of commerce, a trade association, even an informal group of friends or family. I mean, that's kind of overstating it in a professional realm, but you could always practice with them first, low risk, before you work your way up. So one of our newer employees at Anvil, I recently hooked her up with a women's professional networking association, and she presented, and the professionals all up in Bellingham, related to my alma mater, Western Washington University, but she presented from here. She got her speaking experience. She was excited that she didn't throw up, and she now really wants to do more. And I think most people are deathly afraid of public speaking, right up there with snakes and taxes and death. But it doesn't have to be scary. If you start small and work your way up, a balance of practice and being comfortable with the audience and your subject matter helps. So start local, work your way regionally. So I've started with the Portland chapter of a global association, worked my way up regionally and then nationally and then internationally. So a good example of that would be my first IABC presentation was probably 20 years ago for the Portland chapter of International Business Communicators and International Association of Business Communicators. And then they referred me, and I spoke at other markets, I think in either Idaho or Seattle, in Boise or Seattle. And then I was invited to speak in what we call the Heritage region, or what they call the Heritage region, which my first one was in New Orleans. And I've spoken all up and down the Eastern and Midwest seaboard, from Cleveland to Indianapolis to Providence to Hartford. And so each year I go speak to professional career corporate communicators, which is not necessarily normally my group. And I've, fell in love with the group and the people and what they're doing. And that led me to a speaking opportunity at their global conference in New Zealand, which unfortunately hit at mid-late March. And we canceled the flights 2 days before we were scheduled to leave because of COVID. And that conference was pushed out till next year. And who knows if they'll continue with it. So expand it from local to regional to national to global. And that's a great way to earn your creds and build your CV so that when you say, they typically ask if you're new to an organization, where have you spoken? You want to show a gradual improvement in the venue size or the organization size and credibility. Leverage partnerships, friendships, relationships to get into some of the bigger organizations. And those larger events can help you leverage into either paid speaking gigs or other organizations. So I spoke at a conference called Digital Marketing Summit or Digital Summit 15 years ago. An organization called SEMA, it's Aftermarket Automotive Association, that has a big conference in Vegas, now the second largest conference, or was. And they saw me speak. They became a client. They had me speak at their conference. And then two other organizations, NATDA and V-Twin, asked me to speak at their motorcycle and trailer conferences, and because I was already at SEMA. So I was so big there, quote unquote, being at the biggest, that they looked for those organizations for ideas, and it trickled to other organizations. I never sell in my presentations to third parties. And it's not because they pay me to, it's because most organizations don't want you to sell. So I educate, and if they like me, they will reach out. So for instance, I just spoke on omnichannel marketing at the Marketing Analytics Summit virtually at 10 o'clock, an hour previous to this. And omnichannel isn't even our core capability nor my core strength. I was asked by a different conference in senior care a year ago to speak about it. So I researched it, presented it, wrote about it, was interviewed about it, been quoted about the topic on podcasts about the topic. So Jim Stern, who runs it, invited me. He saw me speak at the senior care conference and thought, wow, you must know your stuff. Maybe, maybe not. But that led to a lead immediately after. Somebody was apparently impressed with what I had to say and said, I think we need your help. And they're a global company looking for some marketing help. So again, speaking does work for new business development, not just for thought leadership, and not even just as a pure revenue strategy, which some people speak just to earn money, making a living. That's an option. But I always follow up timely. So I emailed the contact right away after this most recent conference and said, I'm happy to talk. Here's some availability. Here's some additional resources. And I got to go record a PDX Mindshare webinar. Talk to you later. So these are some of the organizations I've spoken for. I've been an adjunct at Portland State for 20 years. If you really love teaching and don't want to make a ton of money, but really have fun and don't necessarily want to work with kids as much as adults, PSU, OSU, U of O have continuing education. So at PSU, they call it the CEPE program. At OSU, it's called PACE. And you can potentially become an instructor without an MBA or a master's degree. Like I don't have one. I don't do grading, but I can do everything else. I just teach once a year. It keeps me fresh. It's a lot of fun. And then I also teach a quarterly workshop for SCORE. It was 3.5 hours. Now it's 2 hours. Got one coming up in a couple months. And that's a great way to get out there. But I love helping small business and educating students to build their careers. So a lot of these opportunities I don't get paid for, and I do it for fun. Some of them I do for business development. Some are more sales oriented, like Richmond Events. That's a pitch business. You pay a lot of money to pitch other businesses, like a dating service for sales and marketing. So a lot of different ways you can leverage a speaking idea. And we can track our KPIs every week: speaking opportunities, syndicated articles, coverage, awards, and press releases. And we have goals for each of those every year. And, we're not quite halfway through the year, and we're more than halfway across everything but press releases, which are of limited value anymore. But with my background in PR, it's still a thing we try. So that's the first element, is speaking. The second is syndicated articles. So it's one thing to write for your blog, like let's say you have a company blog like Anvil, or you can write for, we can write for the PDX Mindshare blog, or I can write for SEM PDX as a former co-founder, president, and alumni board member, advisory board member. I can blog anytime for SEM PDX, but it's far more compelling if I'm blogging or writing articles for third parties rather than for my own business. because it has that extra validation, that third-party validation we've talked about. So I originally was blogging for Online Marketing Institute, then they got sold, and I wrote for iMedia, and then they all killed the entire editorial department for iMedia. And I wrote for them for like 7 or 8 years. And then I've been blogging on and off for SEMPDX, which is sempdx.org, search engine marketer trade association here in Portland, for probably 8 years. And I just, once a quarter, maybe I'll write a blog post for them a couple times a year. And then for shorter form content, I'll write for the Portland Business Journal. Most recent one I wrote is podcast strategies for the quarantine life and beyond, which hit last week. And then Smart Brief, I've got an article theoretically coming out this week about, I don't even remember, maybe podcasting, maybe something else. But I'm constantly submitting articles to get them out there. The reason is that publications and organizations don't have the horsepower they used to in terms of ability to create unique content. So they rely on you. So they are open to receiving good writing, good quality content from you, the subject matter expert. So again, I've been writing for other organizations for nearly 20 years, but for the last 2 to 3 or 5 to 6 years, it's been 2 to 3 different places I will syndicate that are not Anvil or PDX Mindshare, to get the word across, because my team will typically write for Mindshare and Anvil. That's just a bit more comfortable, more streamlined. And then I am the outward facing sales and marketing guy, because a lot of what I do is business development. So start with a simple library with your LinkedIn post, because it's easy and it's free. You can also have a free WordPress site if you want, or if you have a business website, build out your blog if you don't already have one, and commit to posting. I recommend blogging 2 to 4 times a month, meaning up to 800 words. And for longer form articles, 1,500 to 3,000 words, maybe once a quarter, or between once a month and once a quarter. So it's really about word length or depth of articles. So shorter articles, 600 to 800 words, should be roughly weekly or biweekly, and longer form, 1,500 words, maybe, or 1 to 2,000 words might be monthly, and the 3,000 word is probably quarterly. So think, whether are you a daily publication or a weekly, are you a monthly publication? And that will kind of give you a sense of the kind of style you want. So if you're going to go in depth, do the less frequency. And then what you can do is parse it out into multi-parts, or you can build from 3 parts into one big long form. So an example is this podcasting article. Portland Business Journal likes under 1,000 words. So I typically write about 800 words. Same with Smart Brief. Their word count is roughly 800 words. They want short little snips, because the name is Smart Brief, not Smart Long Form. So what I'll do is I'll write typically I'll write in the 1,500 to 3,000 word count range. That's my sweet spot, is more timeless content. I still share articles to educate clients and prospects that are 10 years old, because they're largely evergreen, about at a strategic level, not focusing too much on technology tools or trends. And so I will write that long form, then I'll slice it into 2 to 3 parts. And so the article that I used to write for Online Marketing Institute, or articles or blog posts, long form blog posts for SEMPDX, I'll slice into 2 to 3 parts for Smart Brief, or reformat and tweak them so they're roughly unique content for a Portland Business Journal. So I wrote a podcasting strategy article 3 years ago. I think it's on SEMPDX or Online Marketing Institute. Or even iMedia, I don't remember which one. And then I turned that into a 3-part series for Smart Brief, 2 to 3 part series. And then I refreshed it and modified it for this most recent article for Business Journal, because they want original content. Everybody wants original content. So I tweaked it just enough so that it's unique. If you put them side by side, you can see similarities, but it is truly unique content. Google loves unique content. Readers want unique content. So I try to give it to them. So you can go out and pitch your industry publications. I'm a writer, but it helps if you can show the sample library to show your writing style and your credentials. Also, again, you hopefully have 500 connections on LinkedIn by then, and have a history of posting good content, maybe even out on Twitter as well, because they'll look for that. And then you want to offer them that industry unique content, right, that they haven't seen, or they need refreshed regularly. And that can be business publications, industry publications, or local publications. But for the most part, if you're building your reputation within an industry, you're going to want to focus on thought leadership within that industry. Now, again, repurposing is key. So in some cases, I'll build a presentation first, like this presentation, Then I'll write an article using the PowerPoint presentation as an outline, or vice versa. I'll write an article, depends on which I'm pushed to do first or encouraged to do first, and then I will boil that down into a presentation. I've found both directions create equal value, depends on your writing preference. If you're a strong writer and have a strong process, like I write an outline format and then I fill in the blanks, then either direction works, because I can start with an outline and build a deck, or I can start with an outline and write an article, and then the presentation is a boiled down version of bullet points of highlights from the paragraphs of an article, or vice versa. I take the salient points out of the paragraph and make those a couple bullets for each concept in the article, right? So that's how you can repurpose. You can record like we are. We're recording this, so this will be an audio broadcast, a podcast, or a webcast on YouTube. We have the PowerPoint, and I have an article that I've built based on this presentation. So that's how everything can be leveraged and repurposed and reatomized to maximize value. So I will say I have a couple of notable blog posts. I think, again, for SEM PDX, it's industry focused digital marketing. I've done live blogging for SEM PDX, and this is a secret tip for you. If you want to attend industry conferences, typically in person historically, and you're not able to get in as a speaker or get in free, and they're, say, anywhere from $300 to $3,000, apply for a press pass and live blog from an industry publication. So I've used iMedia and SEM PDX and Online Marketing Institute for press passes for conferences at which I was not speaking but didn't feel like paying for. Now, it's work because I have to live blog, but it keeps me focused and I'm actually paying attention. And then even though I'm not speaking, I'm getting a bunch of awareness because I write it, post it real time, share it, and with hashtags related to that conference, and people are seeing the writing. And even if I didn't speak on stage, I added value by summarizing something they might have missed. If there's multiple sessions or tracks, then they are particularly appreciative, and I might add some point of view to it, so they might be interested in what I'm saying. The other thing is to reach out and connect with industry influencers in your space and put yourself as a resource, as a guest blogger, as an interviewee. So Seth Godin is the #1 marketing blogger and a top best-selling author of marketing books. His most recent book, This is Marketing. I highly recommend it. And I reached out to him about a speaking opportunity to bring him in as a keynote to SEM PDX many years ago, over 10 years ago. And I turned that into a relationship where he potentially was going to become a client. And instead, I ended up taking him to lunch in Midtown Manhattan, had 2 hours with Seth Godin. It was one of the highlights of my career, all because I leveraged different aspects. He even blogged about PDX Mindshare. Honestly, you can find that blog, just Google it. So these are different ways you can see. I've also some notable posts on the right side from LinkedIn. When I see a trend and I want to write something quickly, like I did yesterday about the race riots, I felt that it was timely to post right then. And so there are different ways to leverage the blogs as real-time live blogging, or guest blogging, or guest host on a blog, or interviewee. All those can be leveraged through blogging, and not all of it may even be your total content, but you're leveraging these third-party blogs to get some notoriety and some thought leadership credentials. So beyond speaking engagements and syndicating articles, there's the press coverage and media interviews. So getting mentioned by the press, getting interviewed by the press is an amazing way to build your brand. So the first thing I recommend is subscribing to Help a Reporter Out, HARO for short, owned by Cision. Helpareporter.com, I believe, is the URL. Free newsletter 3 times a day. You will get a list of 30 to 100 requests from editors and reporters for experts on specific topics. And so on the bottom right, you can see proxy keywords for wealthy clients was a story for Forbes by Kate Harrison. She was asking for experts. How do you target the wealthy with Facebook killing some of their demographic targeting? And in my pitch is in the middle. So I said who I am, why she should care. I answered her questions, added some additional resources for my credentials, my thought leadership credentials. And then the finished article, she actually interviewed me for that article. And I'm even in the first, maybe in the first paragraph, right? So actually, that's not the first paragraph, it's the second paragraph. I'm sorry about that. But from an SEO, search engine optimization standpoint, that is a 94 domain authority. So I'm getting a link to Anvil from Forbes. invaluable credentials, if not SEO juice, right? So I pitch probably on average, well, I'll say one a day, 3 to 7 a week, let's say. And I have maybe a 20% hit rate. So I'm getting on average 1 to 3 hits per week for press coverage, which means, or 0 to 3, which means last year we had about 120 press hits. The year before that, a little over 100. And the year before that, just under 100. So that's a lot of mentions for a dozen-person company or smaller. So it takes me, a half hour a week, and then I save all the pitches and I reuse 80% of those pitches because people then ask the same question from different publications. I've already got my answer. So I spend 5 to 10 minutes writing a response. I might reuse it 2 to 3 times. Each time it takes less than a minute to reformat it and customize it. So it's a very efficient way to get mentions. Most of the time they pull your quote, your recommendation, your answer to their question as a quote, and then just churn content. But every once in a while, the top publications, which are usually known as anonymous, they are, so you get harangued as much, they will actually interview you like true reportage. So create the pitch, reuse the pitch. Sometimes I take the pitch and turn it into an article or a blog post. I did that 2 weeks ago. And we recycle content, reformat it across from Anvil to Mindshare, Mindshare to Anvil, and to third parties. And once you get that coverage, you can promote it. It's great for your sales pipeline, for your marketing automation. When I reach out to prospects about Anvil and why they should work with us, it helps to say, and here's our latest coverage. It's just more content to put into the system. And again, really good for SEO and credibility. So of the three, press coverage and media mentions is the highest SEO value. It may not generate the highest return in terms of my goal of leads. Speaking does that better. Syndicated articles does that slightly better. Obviously, syndicated articles, it's worth noting, is also great SEO because your byline is included on a third-party website. And depending on how much control you have over what links you can embed in the article, you can actually influence and get some good Google juice that way. Most of the big publications are very stringent on what links you can incorporate. Portland Business Journal, as a thought leader, their leadership trust, they will pull out any links that seem self-serving and then force me to add links to source. I'm not used to sourcing as much as they do, but that's good. They have high standards, so it's a good practice. And then in terms of industry awards and recognition, this is more than vanity to me. I may look vain with that goofy picture of my Marketer of the Year for AMA back in 2012. I am a PR guy by trade, and even though I've been in digital since '96, I've never let go of the PR capabilities, and the benefit has been tremendous for building brands at 9 different agencies. Actually, more like 6 of the 9, where I actually had some credentials. Took me a couple of years, but basically, I use these awards. Most of these I didn't even apply for. Somebody might have nominated me, or they find you. It's a snowball effect, right? If you're seen as a thought leader by one organization, they're likely to use you as a starting point to source their own thought leaders for awards and recognition. So a lot of the industry awards we get as Anvil, we don't even solicit. They just recognize us as a top SEO or paid media search marketing agency, digital advertising agency, whatever it is. Some of these you apply for, like the 40 under 40. I applied for that one. I was nominated for the AMA award. I didn't know I was going to get that. I didn't know about the BuzzSumo award. That was some sort of metrics that they used to figure that out. But my point is, I don't even send these to my parents anymore. I don't put them on my wall. I have no awards in my office with my name on them that are anything other than for doing really driving cars really fast. All those awards that are for recognition go out on the front award case. As people walk in, they're like, oh, they've got awards. Cool. That's table stakes. But I think the idea with awards is you apply, especially if they're free or low cost. And then if you get considered or win, then you market the heck out of it. It's really critical, I think, as a thought leader to have a couple awards under your belt and other recognition. The easy way to do that without being an expert is a lot of volunteer work. You'll get recognized as a top volunteer for trade organizations or other nonprofits or charities. That can go into your credentials. And a lot of brands now and a lot of consumers want to see socially responsible, socially aware, environmentally conscious brands or individuals and want them on their team or want to work with them. So these are ways, awards are a great way to do that. And sometimes just entering a URL or entering your name, or just getting out there, these come to you oftentimes. So I'm going to wrap up talking about the end game. I recommend starting with your end game. What is your end game? Is it to retire by a certain age, or is it to prepare for your post-retirement? So being a thought leader in itself, I would guess that less than 1% of thought leaders make a living on thought leadership. I'm a thought leader. I don't make a living off of my thought leadership. I make a living by selling in the idea that I can grow my client's business faster than they can do it with anybody else or on their own. And the thought leadership comes out of loving to educate and connect people with ideas and each other. That's how I've built my career. But the end game for some people, especially the entrepreneurs I've talked to that originally asked me for their thoughts on this back in November, December, this is how this topic got started, is that I'm thinking about what do I want to do when I retire, whether that's 5 years or 15 years from now. What do I want to be doing post-retirement? Because you can tell by how fast I talk, I don't sit still. And I don't know what retirement looks like other than I have to be doing something, coaching entrepreneurs, coaching students, mentoring business owners, something along those lines. So this thought leadership is important for my credentials when if and when I part ways with Anvil. I need to have those credentials to be able to encourage people to pay me for the work I want to do that's paid, or to volunteer if that's, obviously it's less important to be a thought leadership if you're volunteering your time, but it certainly helps. So I started my thought leadership career in 1996 when I started Anvil as an e-zine, because I was at a company called Vivo Media. So I bought the domain Anvil-Media because it was Vivo-Media. And we had this industrial look, and it was just a weekly newsletter. And then that evolved when I went to my next agency, KVO, in 97. We started as a monthly e-zine because Vivo disappeared and I took over the domain. Nobody else wanted that e-zine or the newsletter, and I created a monthly e-zine out of it and kept it going from 1997, briefly as a monthly under there, but then out on my own from 2000 to 2006. I was the editor, I guess you could say, and I had friends contributing. So Anvil-Media still exists. You can see the old content archived, but that's where Anvil came from, my business. I created an S Corp in 2000 because I thought I'd sell my e-zine for millions of dollars, and it didn't work out that way. Instead, I built a career as a consultant, then hired employees and became an agency. But the thought leadership started with Anvil as a newsletter, then as a monthly e-zine, as a thought leadership creative outlet, basically. Then I started as an adjunct professor at Portland State in 2000, right as I was changing jobs. And in fact, I was unemployed at one of my first workshops, and 16-hour workshop. And I stuck with it because I knew my end game was to teach. So instead of I can't teach because I don't have a job, I decided to teach even though it wasn't really about the money. I stuck with it. I'm glad I did. I've been teaching for 20 years. And then the teaching has led to some paying gigs with like Sutherland Global. I did a customer appreciation event in Vegas, and I said I need to fly first class kind of as a joke. And they flew me out there and paid me to speak to their top customers, a 3-hour workshop. And then it's led to global speaking events where they cover part or all of my travel, Toronto, Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, and then New Zealand, which unfortunately has been delayed a year. And then I've been paid very well for even Oregon Food Trail, was doing 75-minute workshops for local restaurant, winery, hotels in southern and more rural Oregon. And I would have done that for free. And that's kind of where we're going to go with this now that the travel and tourism industry has been hit hard. I won't charge for my time to help keep those businesses afloat. So my end game is to be able to do what I love, writing and speaking, podcasting, whatever it is, and not have to make a living off it if I don't want to, because I want to volunteer my time as well. So the goal is build up enough of a reputation that I can choose my price and choose my speaking ops, what articles I write for whom. And so I've been building that for over 20 years, and it makes it easier, but you can start today. And I continue to evolve. In the last 2 months, I've pivoted to podcasting more as a guest host and co-host than ever before, because we have more time and people are consuming more audio. So that's a potential direction. If you have a silky smooth voice, I know that I have a really good face for radio and for podcasting. I also know that I can't stand the sound of my voice. And when I pull up at a drive through or I answer the phone at home, people call me Mrs. Lewis. And so I'm not sure where that comes from. But anyway, little side note. So here's some resources for you to consider. Again, we'll get you this deck out on SlideShare. We'll send you a link to this sometime after in the next couple of days. So you can click through and read these related articles and click on the related links to podcasts and other sources. I recommend signing up for our weekly Mindshare newsletter. I'm actually going to move to monthly. As of this week, we decided to go to a monthly newsletter, but sign up for the LinkedIn group and connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out the resources on our Anvil site. We have all kinds of business and marketing related articles and resources, and then other events that we're participating in that you may want to be aware of. You can always email me with questions, ken@anvilmedia.com. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing and we can take some questions now. There is if you see there's a little chat, the third icon down, you can enter in a chat if you'd like. Otherwise, feel free to ask any questions. If you've got any, just go ahead and unmute. Otherwise, I'm happy to wrap this up. And we can, and I hope you'll join us at one of our future workshops. I believe the next workshop is June 10th, and I will put a link in real quick here. I'm going to go to our webinars section, and I'll share the link right now for that workshop. It's how to create and manage a podcast for your brand. Now that sounds amazingly convenient. So I'm going to put this up here and I'll answer the question. You had mentioned other blogging platforms. What are your thoughts on Medium? So my thought about Medium is it's apparently good enough for Barack Obama, our former president. He wrote a really great article yesterday or the day before about what's going on with George Floyd. It's powerful in terms of credibility, but it is not as SEO friendly as WordPress. WordPress is the best SEO bomb-proof platform. Medium has some built-in awareness because it's purely a blog platform versus WordPress is evolved into a lot of other things. So I would recommend Medium number 2 behind WordPress and everything else distantly third, with the exception of LinkedIn. The benefit to blogging on LinkedIn from a career standpoint is every time you post a blog, it automatically posts to everybody's status update that follows you. You can share it easily through LinkedIn. So in an ideal world, what you do is you split the difference. You post on Medium, you do a recap on your LinkedIn blog and then share that, or vice versa. Right on LinkedIn, do a recap on Medium. It's kind of can go one way or the other. Hopefully that helps. And then tips on how to approach a prospect or client organization to propose yourself as a relevant speaker. Or articles. So whether it's speaking or writing, I recommend starting small, right? So I mentioned as a speaker, do regional, local events so that when you approach larger organizations, you can share relevant experience. Sometimes they care very little about your past experience. Sometimes they ask for actual videos, and I have to dig some up. That's not very common. It's easier with virtual events, right, to have those recordings. But I would start with the events. I'd start locally, record like I went to this event, I spoke here. Sometimes they ask the number of attendees. IABC always asks me that, most recent events and the crowd size, just to get a sense. So start small, build your repertoire on speaking with local regional events or virtual or otherwise. And then with writing, start with your LinkedIn or Medium or WordPress free blog posts and show some samples, like 3 to 5 writing samples before you reach out to those industry publications with samples of the previous writing. The other way to short circuit that is if you've got a great article you're confident they will just send them, ask if they'd like to see the abstract or the full article. They say yes, you send it to them, and you say you've got 3 days to decide. Otherwise, I'm going to go to a different publication. I've got other interests, etc. That's what helps me when Smart Brief or others are slow to respond. I'm like, if you want this, you got 48 hours. Otherwise, I'm shopping it, and they'll always get back to me like, no, we love it. That's great. So you want to sometimes shop it around, but remember, original content. So you don't shop around an article you've already published on your blog or somebody else's blog. You'd have to rewrite it or change it up. And then another question, how do you know that your request for follower has been accepted on LinkedIn. You actually, it's interesting you asked that, because you, as far as I can tell, you have to go back in and do a search for them. And if they show that there's still not a connection, then that's the indicator. And mostly it just stays in their inbox. And I do like the idea of abstracts. So for instance, on Mindshare, to keep our blog fresh, I took articles from all over the place around career-related topics, and then rewrote abstracts for the top 12 articles. And then we had a year's worth of monthly blogs that were based on original content, but they're just recaps. So the recap is original content, and it sources the original article too. So we're getting more traffic back to the original article. We have original content on the Mindshare blog, and we do that sometimes with Anvil posts. So it's a great way to have multiple footprints and recycle old content, refresh old content by having an updated abstract, or if you have the time, just rewrite the article. So that's what I did with the podcast article for Portland Business Journal. I rewrote it and refreshed it and trimmed it down, and it was very much unique content at that point. Any other questions before we wrap up? I think this has been really good, very engaging. Anybody? Yes.
I have a question, where, as you're kind of creating your content and like using stuff on Medium and LinkedIn, if you were linking back to your personal, like your WordPress site, that's helping with SEO, right? To do.
Yes. I mean, yes, it does. It's, links from big social platforms are they don't carry the weight, meaning they carry a high trust. Google trusts Facebook, they trust Medium, but they don't, it's usually what you call a no follow. So basically you're not going to get a bunch of link juice so much as Google's like, noted, I'm not going to give you 30% of CNN's, juice or LinkedIn or Facebook, but I am noted that you are publishing there and referencing it. So there's trust rank and page rank, and trust rank is more like, if you're getting good links in from top sites, even if they're no follow, they count for something to some degree. But don't think it, like that Forbes link, I didn't check. It's probably a no follow, meaning I don't get all the Google juice from a 94 page rank out of 100, which is totally ideal. But at least I get the traffic and I get the credential. Google will say, you did get that link. We won't fully count it, but we acknowledge it. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Yes, it does. Thank you.
You bet. And last question, do you categorize content as basic, intermediate, or advanced by general, specific, highly targeted audience, etc.? I think that's really important question. Thank you for that. So what I would suggest, or the way I'd answer that is, I by default write for intermediate or basic. My team writes for advanced. So while I could talk about a few advanced topics related to digital marketing, like I know a little bit about SEO to be dangerous, I don't know enough about paid search to be speaking at any depth. So my strategy for thought leadership has been be broad and medium depth instead of really deep and narrow. The reason is because I have passions and interests that span outside of digital, as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, as an instructor. So really what I focus on is content for the marketing manager up to VP. That's my sweet spot, is creating content that educates them on a topic, and whether they're the decision maker or the influencer. And then from there, we build it out, right? I mean, so it is generally intermediate or beginner, and it's generally towards the senior level marketers. CMOs are too busy or too savvy for me. So I have not had as much luck or interest in targeting them. It's mainly the day-to-day contacts, which are our VP of marketing, director of marketing, marketing manager. That's the content that we typically create or that I focus on. And then beginning entrepreneurs, beginning marketers, with all my career advice and such through Mindshare. So the categorization happens naturally. It self-selects more than, and it's intentional towards specific audiences. But highly targeted is overstating. It's mainly like, are you a marketer and you want to learn? I'm happy to educate you, knowing that I really ideally want to talk to the VP of marketing. I'm happy to talk to everybody just because that's who I am. I think that's all the time we have. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. You can email me with any additional questions, Kent@AnvilMedia. Follow me on Twitter, Kent J. Lewis, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to thank you all for your time, and we will talk to you again soon. Go to Anvil Media, click on the link, and catch me on the 10th to talk about how to build your podcast strategy, which is one of the newest ways to build thought leadership. Joe Rogan has just did $100 million deal for his podcast to move over to a new network. You can do the same thing. Just give yourself a little time. Have a great day. Talk to you later.